in the past is exponentially higher.
One of the things that all of our drivers love is they can bounce around all the tracks, not just in the southeast, northeast and out west as well. And they can always get that same chin experience, that same consistency, and focus on safety.
And now here's your chance to drive your sports car at a great racetrack with Chin Track Days. Visit our website online at chintrackdays.com. That's your portal to advanced driving at the track.
Hi, this is Vincent Howard, Treasurer of the Florida NSX Club. We want to welcome you all to NSXPO 2020. Sorry we could not be there in person. Just a quick note, Zanardi number 17 finally making its appearance. So hopefully next year we get together and see you guys in person.
And this is Waishin, the president of the NSX Club of America Florida chapter. I want to say hi to everybody as well. We hope you guys are having a great time, and we plan to be there in 2021. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Hello everybody, this is Nabil from Orlando, Florida. NSX is my passion. I love working on these cars. I own one myself. If you have any problems, give me a call. We'll take care of it for you. Thanks.
To be able to contribute to this year's virtual NSXPO, and we hope you'll enjoy hearing about the past, present, and future of our own NSX experience and what we're calling Rescue to Racetracks, the story
so far
of the Lap of the World NSX.
It all started in 2008 with a 26-year-old Richard. In his defense, he was left unsupervised.
So yeah, you could say buying this car was really the first adventure. After fawning over the NSX in my dad's car magazines and later in video games, I found myself in 2008 with a stable job, a garage, and some extra cash. After a protracted search, I found my NSX on eBay, flew one way to New York, and paid $16,000 for a clean title, running, driving, manual NSX. Back when that was the thing you could do. Granted, for that low price, I then drove the roughly 800 miles back home with the electrical systems failing around me as I went. I lost the speedometer in Jersey, the dash lights in Pennsylvania, and the wired-in radar detector refused to turn off as I approached Virginia. This was on top of probably an even dozen active diagnostic codes and a transaxle in the dreaded snap ring range. Suffice to say, it had been a bit neglected. However, this NSX has been nothing if not resilient, and so after 12 hours in a state of continual mild pucker, I made it back to Tennessee without assistance and got to work. It took 2 years. 2 years of troubleshooting, diagnostics, wrenching, shop visits, and plenty of stupid questions on the NSX Prime forum. But after those 2 years, in addition to VIP status at Harper Acura's parts desk, I had what most would consider a fully capable Acura NSX. And as we all know, that's a hell of a car. One I wanted to experience to the fullest. August of 2010 saw my NSX on the track for the first time at Talladega Grand Prix Raceway, or Little Talladega in Alabama. That successful outing led to another, and another, and another, and before long I had graduated NASA's HPDE ladder and was granted a time trial license. Now, I don't have anywhere near the competition resume of some of the other presenters at this virtual expo, nor do I consider myself a quote-unquote racing driver, even though I have done some wheel-to-wheel events in other cars. That said, over a couple of seasons, this NSX and I did manage to podium a few time trial events, including one win. Unfortunately, subsequent rule changes and a reluctance on my part to ruin the car for road use conspired to put a damper on my competitive aspirations. However, when one door closes, as they say, this change of priorities coincided with my decision to attend my first NSXPO in 2013. And that event in Raleigh, North Carolina really sold me on making NSXPO a fixture on my calendar, and although I promptly then missed the 2014 edition, I promise I had a good excuse.
He was putting a ring on it. At the top of a castle ruin overlooking the Nürburgring. So, you could say I knew what I was getting into long before we had our wedding bands made from a broken NSX connecting rod. Not ours, but I think we still owe that guy a bottle opener. In fact, our first trip together was a weekend with friends at Barber Motorsports Park over Valentine's Day, I might add. However, my first NSXPO was the 2015 event in Palm Springs. Richard will say he talked me into it, but it really didn't take much convincing, and I certainly have no regrets. I enjoyed the amazing desert scenery, the pageantry of the car show at the Air Museum, the spectacle of the banquet, and the excitement of the track day at Thermal. At the track, Richard was instructing, and I get bored easily, so I volunteered to help, which is how I met Jim, aka Cause, who put me in charge of loaning out helmets for people who didn't bring their own. Which, incidentally, is how I met Peter Cunningham, who quite politely allowed me to explain to him how a helmet should fit and hold his phone as collateral to give it back to me afterwards. Only later did I make the connection between him and the number 42 real-time racing NSX on display in the paddock. Through that long weekend, we met so many people who we still call friends and we always look forward to seeing. Each year is a little like a class reunion, but, one where you actually like a majority of the people attending. I've enjoyed every expo I've been to, either as a guest, an unofficial volunteer, or more recently, a volunteer official enough to have a radio. That's when you know you've made it, folks. Volunteering does mean some work, but it's work put back into the club and the community that we both greatly enjoy. Enough that we organized our own smaller scale event in the Southeast region, an NSXpedition through the Smoky Mountains in 2019, an event that we really hope to host again, once we can do so responsibly. Since 2015, we have visited Orlando, Elkhart Lake, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C., driving our NSX to and from each event and around a different regional racetrack each time. Somewhere in that process, we realized we both really enjoyed the adventure of taking road trips to new places. Richard enjoyed learning and driving each new racetrack, and at some point in there, something clicked. And this is how we ended up on YouTube and why you should smash that.
Whoa. We don't do that on this channel. She's right, though, about why we ended up on YouTube. That model of using an exciting car to experience different parts of the country while driving different racetracks appealed to me on many levels. I love to travel, I'm a geography nerd, a history geek, a driving enthusiast, and although I'm an off-screen introvert, I enjoy having a creative outlet like making videos. That led me to rebrand and relaunch my YouTube channel as Lap of the World, where we are attempting to flip the script on the Top Gear trope of driving all of the cars around one track and talking about the cars, to instead drive one car around all of the tracks and talk about the tracks. Or for the younger generations, I'm basically playing racetrack Pokemon. Gotta drive them all. The journey to drive an NSX around as many road courses as I can across the country and in success around the world is going to be a long burn. To date, this car has been around Little Talladega, Carolina Motorsports Park, Virginia International, Road Atlanta, Nashville Superspeedway, Sebring, Barber, High Plains, Thermal Club, Charlotte's Roval, Road America, Atlanta Motorsports Park, Dominion Raceway, Thunderhill, Corvette Museum, NC Car, Memphis International, Summit Point, The Firm, Waterford Hills, and most recently the driving range at Dakota County Technical College. But there are plenty more to come with something like 130 road courses in North America alone. I'm more worried about running out of time to drive them than running out of tracks to drive. What I'm not worried about is our NSX's ability to carry the torch for a long time to come. It might be strange to consider an NSX as a practical track car, but in reality, while they are no Integra or S2000 in that respect, most consumables are still readily available and relatively inexpensive. It has healthy aftermarket support, as evidenced by the many vendors and sponsors supporting this event and the community at large, and at least if left stockish, they will apparently run forever, as the 200,000 mile club really isn't that exclusive anymore. Precision crafted performance, it seems, isn't just a marketing slogan. You buy any generation of NSX, of course, because you want the car.
But you keep it for 12 years because of the community that grows around it.
We hope you've enjoyed hearing about our own NSX's journey from rescue to racetracks and how it's facilitated so many awesome experiences and connected us with so many amazing people.
Thanks for watching, and thank you to the NSX Club for the opportunity to share our story with this amazing car.
And if you do want to follow the continued journey of this particular NSX, Liz, I won't stop you this time.
Sure. If you want to follow the continued journey of this NSX, we invite you to subscribe to Lap of the World on YouTube or follow us on Instagram.
We hope you enjoy the rest of your virtual NSXPO 2020. And on behalf of our son Gabe, who's behind the camera, I'm Richard.
And I'm Liz.
And we will see you all in the next video, if not out at the track.
Or in Portland next year.
Don't see the chat window. Is that something you guys control on your end, or could it be me needing to refresh the browser?
Yeah, rejoin.
Okay.
Thanks for letting me back in.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi, Jay.
Okay, we're going to give folks maybe another minute to join in, and then we'll get started shortly. Thanks to everyone for being patient with us. And if we could place everybody on mute, please, and I will unmute myself, and Peter can unmute himself too.
Hi, Jay.
Okay, let's get started. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So, welcome to the 2020 Virtual NSXPO brought to you by the NSX Club of America. I'm Mei Lee, also known as Ms. Purple, and I'll be your host today. Today is day 4 of this event. And before we get started with today's live session, what I'd like to do is to have a shout out to today's sponsors. We have Chin Track Days and Lap of the World. They both produced exclusive videos for our event, which went live at 11 o'clock today Pacific. They're posted, accessible from the NSXCA website. So go and check them out. So on the agenda today, who we have is Peter Cunningham, who is going to be presenting a tour of the RealTime Collection Hall. You guys know Peter as an American race car driver and owner of RealTime. He's based in Saukville, Wisconsin, and he is Yep.
Good deal. So here we are at the RealTime Collection Hall. And this is our showroom here. When you first come in, this is where we have it set up kind of like a Honda dealership. And we have different memorabilia on the walls, not very well organized like the cars, but we really enjoy all the models, and we have all kinds of brochures and parts. So this is our parts department, we call it here. And then if you need Honda service, you have to go through that door, but we're not gonna go over there because there's nothing to get service today. Here's where you sit right here, where I try to sell you a car. However, I haven't really sold any cars yet. I just buy them, but someday maybe we'll sell them. So we've got just 3 examples today. Normally there's a Honda S600 that lives right here, but it's on its way to Road America for a photo shoot for tomorrow. So we can't show you that one, but let's start here with this Honda T360. And if anybody has any questions along the way, feel free to put them in the chat, or if that's not working for you, you could try to blurt them out, and Dan can either read your question or I can maybe hear it. But does anybody know what is significant about this Honda T360? Well, let me just tell you. It's the first Honda 4-wheeled vehicle. It was built it came out in June of 1963. So when the Honda Motorcycle Company or Honda Motor Company was only 15 years old, they created this 4-wheeled vehicle. And so this was their very first attempt at an automobile. So this is a K-class truck. It has a 360cc twin cylinder engine. It's rear wheel drive. It's called May Blue. So it's not May Purple, but it's May Blue. And they made 109,820 of these, I believe. And they were all this color. So the ones that were built for export to Australia and New Zealand were all moss green, but every one of these left the factory in this May Blue color. So I actually got this vehicle out of Germany from an ex-Honda dealer that had it. So these were Japan only, but this one had ended up in Germany. So we brought it over here. And as many as they built, over 100,000 that they had built, there's very few left. We think that there's well less than 100 of these left in the world, but this is the only one in North America. And if any of you have been to the Motegi Honda Collection Hall, you'd see an example of this truck. It would be the first thing you see in a particular room of very special Honda vehicles. So a pretty cool deal. We're happy to have it, and that's why we have it in the showroom. In the back here, we have about 500 Hot Wheels. A friend of mine buys them anytime he goes to Target, and he gives them to me every so often. So we need to get these better organized, but every one of these, with very few exceptions, is a Honda product. Here's a couple of OE NSX tires that are very old now, but they still have their stickers on them. Next up, we have a couple more Hondas. And what's special about this one, here's a first gen CRX SI, and this is a second gen CRX SI. What's cool about this black car is it's the first year that they had the CRX SI, which was 1985. So only this year had the two-tone with the either black, white, red, or blue on the top, and then the gray on the bottom. And then in 86 and 87, it was still the first gen model, but the SIs were all one color. So this is special because it's the first year. I bought this from a gentleman who, when he bought it, when it was brand new, he was 51 years old. And it was one of the first ones to land in the States. And he cared for it greatly. And it now has 35,000 miles on it, and it's still in pretty darn good shape. These tires are not the original equipment tires, but it's the same exact model tire. This is the second set, and that he paid $41 each for these tires at the tire rack. So a neat deal. Now this one here is also a very great example. You know, you just don't see these CRXs, first or second gen CRXs going down the road, traveling in the other direction, because so many of them are, highly modified or rusted out or, lowered with fancy wheels and a coffee can muffler. So this one is all bone stock. It was a one owner car as well. And this one only has 10,000 miles on it, 10,500 miles. And it's just pretty cool. If we had smell-o-vision, you could get in here and actually smell what the interior smells like, but it smells like a 1990 Honda. And so it works pretty nicely. So these are just three of the cars that we have, but three of my favorites, so we have them in here. The main hall is through that door right there, and we'll go there next. But before we do that, let's take a look at this photo here on the wall. Somebody chime in and tell me if you've seen that photo before. Anybody?
Well, I have, but that's cheating.
Here. Well, you're a cheater, but thank you for acknowledging that you're there. So basically, what that photograph is one of two photos that is known to exist of Honda's original corporate headquarters. So when Honda was an 11-year-old company that started out in 1948 bolting small engines onto bicycles, 11 years later, they realized that their new business was really thriving, and they were making a big name for themselves in the motorcycle world, certainly in Japan. But they knew that they wanted to come to America and try to be established here. So on June 11th, 1959, they bought this building, showing their commitment. They didn't lease it. They bought this building at 4077 West Pico Boulevard. So there's the address, and says it right on the truck there. And they had a fleet of these trucks that they would use to deliver crated motorcycles to dealers, or bring motorcycles to prospective dealers to try to pitch them, to try and get them to become a dealer. And that was their humble home. Oh, and here's FedEx. So 1 second. Yep. We interrupt this video tour for a FedEx delivery. So if you want to say hi, he's wearing a mask. Cunningham. Thank you. Have a great day. So there's that photo, and then there's this photo. So these are the only two photos that we really know of what the building even looked like. And the reason that there's only these two photos is not a lot of people had iPhones back in those days, I don't think. But there's the same photo. This is the same photo, just zoomed out a little bit. And then to celebrate the 50th anniversary, American Honda did this replica of the storefront in their Torrance Museum. It's still there. So using their idea, we thought that we'd try to do one here as well. But what happened to 4077 West Pico? Well, this is what it looked like in 2010. And then this is what it looked like in 2015. So we had an idea. We were going to buy the building and put Acura's headquarters there because we could save money on a sign. This is where you're supposed to laugh now. Thank you for being muted. It's hard to do these comedy routines when you can't hear the laughter. And here's what it looks like now. Thank you, Dan. That was
You got it.
That was
I'll
a good
laugh
chuckle.
for the audience.
All right, so this is what it looks like now for lease, not for lease. So it's kind of gone through some changes, but it's still there. So without any further ado, you can see here what it says built into the floor, Honda, the power of dreams. So let's take a look.
Ooh.
So quite a few vehicles in here. We can kind of just walk around and see some of them. And then if you see something that you like that you want to talk about, just type it in and we can talk about it. Otherwise, we can talk about a few key vehicles here. Let's take a look at this building up close. We went to great lengths to try to recreate it in its original condition. In fact, we had one of our friends go and measure the building that still exists there. So it's actually life size. So it's 30 feet wide and 20 feet tall. And every detail is pretty much the way it's supposed to be. So you can see the sign here. Ours is an LED sign. We're not sure that theirs was LED, but every detail, including having the truck, is here to help you feel at home. Even down to what bikes are in the back. I don't really collect motorcycles, although we do have about a dozen motorcycles that may have followed me home, but we've tried to focus on the four-wheeled variety. So we hope that you like that. And I could show you inside the building, but that's going to be in a future tour. We don't want to get anybody too excited. So let's start from the beginning as far as North America is concerned. You know, Honda didn't sell automobiles in America until about 1970, late 1969. And these were the two vehicles that they sold. The N600, which was a sedan, even though it's a two-door, and then the Z600, they called the coupe. And I'm sure Dan likes this color. I don't know if anybody else does. But
Colors my walls at home.
so these little cars were not in mass sale here. They sold, you know, tens of thousands of them, but not all that many. And then in 1973, they no longer met the bumper crash capabilities, so they were no longer sold after 1972. but that's right when the Civic came to North America. So let's take a look at that.
So someone is challenging your knowledge. They want to know if you know the official color of that green.
No. Is it sea green?
It's actually Popo green.
Popo green, yeah.
Or Pupo, depending on how you want to pronounce it.
Yeah, some people call it something similar to that. I do know quite a few of the colors, but that one did stump me. So here's what a 1973 Civic looked like, basically. However, this is a 1979 example, which was the last year of that first generation. And what you'll find is every one of these cars has a story. The Popo Green Z600 was owned by a lady who thought it was cute. And the yellow N600 was actually on a showroom floor in Oklahoma City for 30 years before it got sold to somebody in Wisconsin who I bought it from. So it's had an interesting life, and that one only has 8,600 miles on it, the N600. The Z600 has 50,000 miles. This car has 80-some thousand miles on it, and we did repaint it. We try not to buy project cars. We try to buy cars that are all original, or if they're not all original, that they've already been restored. So this one we did repaint, but it was in very good condition. The paint was just faded. This car was owned at one point by a Los Angeles Honda dealer that used it as a parts delivery vehicle. And we didn't repaint the engine room, so you can see how good the condition of this car is. So we were happy to have it in the collection. In fact, this is the first car that I bought, the first old Honda that I bought, and I didn't buy this until December of 2013. So all the cars that we've got here were all purchased after December of 2013. You can see the houndstooth interior, the wood shift knob and steering wheel. So this was the top of the line for the first generation Civic. So if you like that one, you might like this one right here. So 3 years after the Civic came out in '73, the big Honda came out. And certainly in '73, through the introduction of the Accord, people were starting to know the Honda nameplate, and the Civic was very popular with the oil embargo and the great fuel mileage that it got. But it wasn't until the big Honda came out in 1976, that being the Accord, that it really changed the landscape of the American automobile situation, because this car really did a lot of things well compared to what the big three were doing. It handled better, it got better fuel mileage, it had better features, it had arguably better styling, it was more reliable. It just checked all the boxes, and it really was a fantastic car, and it forced change with the American car manufacturers, and certainly got their attention. So what's special about this car beyond that, this is the last year of the first generation, being in 1981, and this car has 4,500 miles on it, and it's 100% original. It hasn't been restored in any way. Even the tires are the original tires, because the second owner of this car, who bought it from a lady in Minnesota where it was first delivered, took these, he drove it back to the East Coast, took these wheels and tires off of it, and put them in a pile and put some other wheels and tires on it, and drove on it for a while on those. So it's just uncanny in every way. If you want to take a look under here, this is what a 1981 Honda Accord looked like. So it hasn't even been detailed, so the dust is on there, but it's just stupid how well preserved this thing was. And if you look at the interior, you can see that plush velour and even all the little tags on the radio and all the stuff. Don't know if you can see the starting instructions here, but they're written out right on the sun visor here on how to start it. So
we got a couple questions for you, if I can interrupt. So
Sure
there's someone is wanting to know if you run the engines and drive any of these cars regularly to keep the seals in good condition, keep them in good running order.
we do. We try to drive each car at least, a handful of miles every summer. We try to only do it on, a nice day, but certainly some we drive more than others. And I think I've put maybe only 100 miles on this car since we got it, but definitely that's a good idea to exercise them. Some of the other cars that are on the shelves that you'll see in a bit, they don't have fuel in them, and they've been oil sprayed in the cylinders to try to protect the engines. But when we bring them down every so often, we'll definitely run them to keep them exercised.
Sure. We've also had a couple comments, people saying that they either had that exact Accord or they knew someone who had that car. Somebody had, apparently in that same color green, they called it the green machine. So you're definitely bringing back memories for people here.
Yeah, it is quite a color. It's called Hampstead green. That one I know. And definitely you hear the stories when other people that have had live tours, everybody's got a story about that. Here's another first gen Civic. This one is sold. Actually, I just sold it a couple months ago, and it's going to Canada, up to Toronto, Warren, so not near you. But this has got 24,500 original miles on it, and it's just an amazing condition. If it had been a 4-speed, it would have sold for a lot more than it did, but it's still a fantastic car with a 2-speed semi-automatic.
What inspired you to start this collection, Peter?
Well, I had a number of old cars back in the day, like a Vista Cruiser and a Chevy Impala SS, and just all kinds of crazy stuff, a couple of Saabs, a couple of Volvos. But when I first got my first old Honda, I thought, well, maybe we should buy Hondas that I raced over the years and just kind of focus on that. But one thing led to another, and some of these non-race cars came into my view, and I decided to buy them anyway because they were so nice. So yeah, things did get a little bit out of hand, but I'm really enjoying the hobby, and I'm not really buying them as an investment, but I think that many of them have appreciated in value because just from the increased interest in the Japanese cars from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Some of the older cars the pricing on those is rather flat, or the older they are, the more they're starting to fall a little bit, whereas the Japanese cars and the other 80s and 90s cars are starting to appreciate, like a Toyota Supra or a 240Z, for $310,000, and just, those are outliers, but definitely all the pricing on some of these special Japanese cars is going up, and certainly Hondas are some of the most special Japanese cars out there.
We also have a question as to whether all the cars we're seeing are for sale.
I'm not sure I understand your offer. Not really. We're not really actively trying to sell them, but if somebody wanted to pry the keys out of my hand and they were giving me a good number, I would be foolish not to at least listen to them. So let's go down here and look at the first Acura. So in 1986, the Acura brand was invented. Actually, some of my retired friends from American Honda were some of the people directly involved with the secret new company. It was called Channel 2 was the internal code that they had for what Acura was going to be before it was named. And the very first Acura to land on the shores in America was an Integra. This is not an 86, this is an 88 special edition, but it basically was this exact car. And it had a twin cam 1600 engine. It made, you know, great horsepower, and it was basically, you know, a fancy Honda. It was everything that a Civic was, but it had better features and some you know, nicer parts on it, and it was an immediate hit. So then eventually the Legend, should we go look at some Legends? The
Yes.
Legend came out. So we have a Legend sedan and a Legend coupe up on the top shelf over here. So that's a Legend sedan that has about 30,000 miles. And then the Legend coupe has a similar number of miles on the other side. So these cars were very amazing. They were so reliable and such great machines. They were very popular and really helped put Acura on the map. Speaking of every car has a story, to back up to that white Integra, the interesting story on that car is it was the second special edition white Integra that the family had. The first one they had, the wife drove her husband, who was a pilot, from one city in Texas to an hour away to another city where he was going to fly out of to do his job, with the son in the back seat. And after they dropped off the pilot, they were on their way home. She fell asleep and drove into the median and rolled the thing into a ball and survived. So that car did not, but the occupants did. And they were so impressed with the crashability and safety of this Acura Integra, they wanted to get another one. So they bought this one and they took just amazing care of it. It's got 51,000 miles on it. Every time they got gas, they would write down how much they paid and all the service records and everything. So it's a very special car. So I wanted to make mention of that. So any other questions before we go to the next one, Dan, there, as you type away?
Well, there's a couple that are kind of global, but we'll hit this one. Is there a particular car that you've been chasing after, but you just haven't been able to get your hands on?
Yes, but if I tell you what it is, that's not going to help me get it for a very good price now, is it? So yeah, there are a few cars that are missing that are important to the collection that we would like to get our hands on, but some of them just don't exist. One example, here's the first generation of Integra that you saw. And now here's the second generation Integra up on the shelf. This is the GSR model. And it came in what? How many different colors? At least three: white, and then that teal and red. Did it come in black?
In Canada.
In Canada, it came in black. That's Jake chiming in. He's my part of the film crew. Well, he is the film crew. So what's interesting about this car is it's got more miles than any other car here. It's got 241,000 miles on it. It was from Colorado, and it was very rust-free, but it had a bunch of stone chips on it, so we did repaint it. And they only made the GSR in 92 and 93, whereas the second gen Integra was from 90 to 94. No, 90 to 93, 4 years. But it had was it a B17, the 1.7 liter VTEC engine, and it was the car that we used to win a rally championship in 1993. So it was definitely, you know, from your original question about why I'm buying old Hondas, this was a must-have, but we just have not found the unicorn one. We have not found one with 10,000 miles or 50,000 miles or 100,000 miles. This one has 241,000 miles on it, but it's in great shape. So a very special car. So that was the second generation Integra. Now let's talk about the third generation Integra. We have 4 of them right here. If we can aim at them. Let's see. Why don't we start with this yellow one here? So the Integras came out, the Type R Integras came out in 1997. They made 398 in 97. Those were all championship white. And then in 1998, they were also all championship white, but they made 1,000 of them or so. And then they didn't sell them in 1999 because they had trouble with meeting emissions that year. And then in 2000 and 2001, they offered them in 2 different blacks, one each year, and then Phoenix yellow. So these colors are more prevalent than the championship white ones. But all in, they only made 3,900 Integras Type Rs for America. So they are still very rare, and they've definitely gone up in price. Whereas only a few years ago, you could find an Integra Type R in really good condition for, in the mid to low 20s. Then all of a sudden they ramped up and they were suddenly 28,000. And then it's like, oh boy. And then it was 30,000. Now it's just gone completely crazy. In fact, I was bidding on one at NSXPO 2018 when we were hearing Graham Rahal speak, whatever site that was. And I was the underbidder at 57,000 and I let it go. So that was then. Since then, a couple have gone for over 80,000. So it's pretty darn crazy what the value of these Integra Type Rs have done. And we'll talk about the NSX pricing when we get to the NSXs here at NSXPO Virtual. But this particular yellow one has 4,600 miles on it. It's never even been washed. It's never been wet. It's never been driven in the rain. Surely it must have gotten wet at some point in its life, but it's just absolutely crazy how brand new it is. Even under the hood here, it's just brand new. Like all the little labels on the wires are still intact, and just everything about it, it looks like just came off the showroom floor. When the first owner had it, he never even had anybody ride in it. I think one time he had somebody ride shotgun, and certainly no one's been in the back seat. So take a look at that interior. So to answer your other question, Dan, I don't think I would ever sell this, but I'm sure if and when I do sell it, I'd be selling it for a lot more than what I had to pay for it, because when I bought it, that was still when things were not that crazy yet. So I was lucky to find it. Then we have a black one. Go ahead.
Someone's curious about how you get the cars up on the shelves.
You just get a running start.
Ba-dum-bum-bum.
We use a forklift. This black 2000 Integra has a story as well. It's got 91,000 miles on it. It was purchased at Davis Acura in Pennsylvania. It was serviced there and traded back in by the same owner. So even though it's a higher mileage example, it's in great shape and it was very well cared for throughout its life. And we needed a black one. Next to that is a friend of mine's car. And this is a 4-door Type R. So what do they call that? Instead of a DB, it's a DB9 instead of a, I don't know, it's got a different, these kids, they have the different nomenclature that they can describe these. But pretty cool. They were very rare in Japan only. And this one's got some miles on it. And it's been driven hard and still cared for, but it's in great shape. We have one more Integra from the 3rd generation to talk about, but it is not a Type R. Does anybody know what this car is? Anyone?
Test car.
It is a real-time 4-wheel drive example. It was Japan only. It was 1 year only in 1994. So America never had a 4-wheel drive Integra, and Japan only had it for 1 year. So pretty cool deal. This one has 14,700 miles on it, all original paint, and the engine is a single cam ZC engine that it was the only Acura to ever have a single cam, but there's something about the engine that it had good torque and mated well to the 4-wheel drive system. So I didn't even know this one existed. You know, I thought I knew about my Hondas and different models that were available, but this one is a good one. And one other little item that it has is this parking pole. So because it's such a large car, this little antenna thing comes up about this tall, so that when you're parking it and backing it into the spot, you can see where that front corner that's farthest away from the driver is. You see that on Japanese cars. So that's our Integra lineup.
Does have a rear wiper, right?
I think so. It does. Yep. Not all the Integras had rear wipers. I think the 97 didn't have one, but then the 98 and up did have the rear wipers. So another model that's popular is the Honda Prelude, and we have one each of all 5 generations. So there's the first generation, which was just called Prelude. It was the first production car, we understand, that had a factory sunroof standard, or a moonroof as it's called. And then I think every Prelude always came with a sunroof after that. So then, so that's a 1980. I think they came out in 79. This is a 85 Gen 2 Prelude SI right there. That one came from right here in Wisconsin and had some winter driving, but really not much. So it's in pretty good shape. Next to that, we have a Gen 3, which is a 1991 Prelude. And this one is certainly the best of the litter. This has 9,700 miles on it. It's got the original tires with 9,700 miles on it. They're age cracked and whatnot, but for the purposes of having it on a shelf and driving around at low speeds, I find them safe. But of course, you would never want to drive them, you know, over.
That is the 4-wheel steering model, correct?
It is. It is the 4-wheel steer, and it was the second most expensive Honda that you could buy in 1991. Do you know what the first most expensive model was? We won't tell you the answer right away. See if somebody chimes in with that, but we do have an example that the camera may have run past. But to continue with the Preludes, this is the Gen 4 Prelude, which was from 92 to 96. And this, again, was a very special model because we raced these. So RealTime Racing, starting in 1993, raced this model. And if you've read the funny papers and seen on our Facebook page, we actually found one of the Preludes that we raced back in the day that we had sold, you know, years later. and we were able to get it back and do a restoration. And I actually raced that in July at a vintage race and had a great time with it. But definitely a very special car because of that. I won my first World Challenge Championship in that car that we restored. And then the following year, Michael Galati, who drove for RealTime, won his first World Challenge Championship in it. So that particular VIN, that particular example, that particular chassis has a great provenance. So this one, of course, is just a road car. It has 47,000 miles out of Scottsdale and is in great shape.
So we got a question. It's whether you could confirm if Honda used the Prelude as their test bed for new tech.
I think I read something about that. Sure, yeah. I think that rings a bell. Sure. And last but not least is the Gen 5 Prelude. This is a 2001 example. It's not an SH, so it doesn't have that extra feature, and it doesn't have the rear wing, but it's got 22,000 miles on it. And the guy bought it for his wife up in Washington State. She loved it so much, she never drove it. So it's not in as quite a good a shape as the 9,700 mile one, Gen 3, but it is very, very nice.
Can you confirm if you hold the record for the highest price paid for a Prelude on Bring a Trailer?
I can confirm that, yes. I'm quite proud of that. Not really, but I have the most expensive Honda Accord ever traded publicly as well. So I'm just, trying to pay as much for these as that I possibly can, because, money doesn't matter to me.
Do you want to share which one, or should we see if people can guess which one was the most expensive?
The most expensive Honda in 1991.
No.
Well, definitely it was the Gen 3 that was the most expensive.
Yeah. No. So the most expensive Prelude, we didn't have a lot of guesses.
Oh, well, no, it wasn't the most expensive Prelude that I wanted to guess. It was what was the most expensive Honda in 1991. The Prelude was this Prelude four-wheel steer SI was just under 20,000, but this car over here was just over 20,000. And this one is a 1991 Accord Special Edition. So this is a good segue into our Honda in Accord lineup. The Prelude was just the first, second, third, and fourth generation Accords. When they had a special edition, that was the top of the line. After that, for Gen 5 and up, when they came out with a special edition, usually the last year of production of that given model, that given chassis, that's when they came out with the special edition. But it was really not the top of the line. EX was still top of the line on those Gen 5 and newer ones. And so the special edition was like an LX plus. So if it's a DX at the low end, LX and EX at the top end, the special edition slotted in between, and it was like a value price thing. So you got some of the stuff from an EX, but it was more value priced. But back in those early days, as I was starting to say, these were the top of the line. So it has a leather interior, fancy wheels, fancy stereo, and it was just very Acura-like. It was very, very nice. And I believe it was the first model car to have an LED third brake light. So continuing in the theme of Accords, on the top shelf, we have a car that's 1 year newer than the Hampstead Green Gen 1. So this is a Gen 2. And this car here, in its trim level, that it's as it sits here, was sales proof. This was the one that was on the showroom floor with every option known to man. And it has alloy wheels, mud flaps, door edge guards, body side molding, wheel opening moldings, bumper overriders, luggage rack, leather wrap steering wheel, air conditioning, automatic transmission, and rear louvers. From memory, I think that's most of the options. So nobody could afford to buy that. That's the one they had on the showroom floor. Now, conversely, this Gen 5 Accord here. This was the one that was maybe in the advertisement, drive this car for $99, because this is a DX, bottom of the line. So no wheels, tires, locks, or windows. And this car doesn't have a radio, doesn't have air conditioning, and a manual transmission. So, and it's Ted Klaus was the large project leader on that generation Accord. Here's a S600 Roadster that is in pretty nice shape, but needs some work before it can really be roadworthy. And I think we better get to the NSXs. We're starting to run out of time here.
I was thinking the same thing.
This being a Honda Insight, and why is that here? Well, it's a very special car because it's built at the NSX factory. It has all aluminum unibody like the first gen NSX had. The suspension bits look like baby NSX parts, and it's got a VTEC engine. It's a 1 liter 3-cylinder engine, but it's pretty cool. And to this day, this thing really has quite a reputation in the hybrid world. So we've got a couple NSXs to close out. There's a S2000 over there. That's a first year production, year 2000, S2000. So it's an AP1. It's got 19,000 miles and in Grand Prix white with the red interior. But talking about this NSX here, does anybody recognize this car? This is just the best car in the whole collection. Does anyone disagree in the room? Jake's trying to not laugh. This is Jake's car, but this has actually been updated with the fixed headlights and has a lot of Type R parts on it, and is a pretty great example. And he drives the you-know-what out of it, and it takes a licking and keeps on ticking. And then over here, my favorite NSX is this Monaco Blue Pearl 2001 example. I think one of 7 built in 2001 in this color combination with the hood ajar. And I just love driving this. It's actually got 2002 wheels on it, not the 2001 wheels, but it's got 18,000 miles, and it's just my favorite NSX. Now, I'd like to have a new one, but I don't want to have to sell too many of these to try to get one. So, any other questions from anybody?
Yeah, they want to know what your favorite model in this collection is and why.
My favorite model,
favorite,
like
yeah,
NSX.
Favorite model car in the collection, I guess.
Well, I think I'm drawn most to this blue NSX here because of what it does, you know, while you're driving it. It's just a very special car. I like driving all of them, some more than others. I like this Vamos is what I like. You know the Vamos? This is the least prolific model of Honda with 4 wheels. They only sold 2,500 of these in a 4-year period from 1970 to 1973. But it's, I think, one of the most beautiful examples of Honda technology. And it's very safe because it has these bars here, so nothing bad could ever happen as you're driving it. So I'd say the NSX in answer to your question.
Are there any cars that you've sold from the collection that you really regret having sold?
Not really, no. The only cars I've ever sold are ones that were not as nice as the one that I kept. So I sold a second gen CRX because I had that 10,000 mile one. I sold a first gen Accord because we have this 4,500 mile one. And I sold that white Civic over there because I have a nicer, or not a nicer example, but a higher end example. So I might be selling a couple more in the future, and I might regret that. So that's why I haven't sold them yet or offered them for sale. But we're starting to run out of room, and there's still a couple key vehicles that that we need, so I can maybe offload one or two of these where I maybe have still a duplicate.
Is the white NSX still in your collection? I don't think I saw that.
It's not here. It's at my house.
Mm.
I just have it at my house so I can take it on demand.
What are your thoughts on the NA1 NSX value trends?
Sure, let's talk about that. Yeah, if you could have bought an NSX, you know, in 2009, you'd be, you know, if you could have bought 10 of them, you could have sold them for a lot of money and retired right now. So it's hard to predict what was going to happen. You know, if it was that easy to predict, people would have been snapping them up. But the latest report that I read the headline of from Hagerty is that the rising sale prices is flattening a bit, but yet, you know, they're not going down. So, you know, if you could have bought a car even 5 years ago, it would be worth a lot more now. Sometimes when a new generation model replaces the previous generation, like a Corvette or a this or a that, sometimes the value of that previous model tanks. But in the case of the NSX, we've seen only a rise in values. So that's great, but it really doesn't matter if you're not selling yours, and we hope that you're not selling yours, but it is a pretty amazing car, and that's why this particular one is my favorite.
While you're pontificating, what are your thoughts on Honda pulling out of Formula One?
That was a shocker, yeah. I can't speak for them, but I can imagine that they have other things they want to do with that money. And not just because of COVID, but just because of what's going on in the world and with the electrification coming on. Perhaps that's another big part of it. But it's a shame, and we'll be sorry to see them go. But I think they've left the door ajar if Red Bull or someone else wants to, you know, take the technologies and take it from there. But it'll definitely be a lesser series without Honda there.
All right, well, let's wrap up. I want to thank you for taking the time. Obviously, very detailed haul and a great collection of vehicles, and thank you for sharing them with everyone. I know I enjoy the view, so thank you, Peter.
You bet. We have hundreds of dollars worth of Hondas here.
Yes, thank you so much. We do, to echo Dan's appreciation for the time that you've taken to give the 2020 Virtual NSXPO folks in this session a behind-the-scenes peek. I'd like to just remind everyone to tune in tomorrow. It's our last day of our event. We will have a Honda Performance Development Racing session taking place from 12 until 1 p.m. noon, 1 p.m. Pacific time. On the agenda is Michael Shank with Meyer Shank Racing, Lee Neffenegger, who's the global program manager for the NSX GT3 Evo, and then Trent Hinman, who is a driver who is associated with Meyer Shank Racing and some other teams. So